Commander Laura Wells stared at the blinking light on her control panel. She had seen many strange things during her 15 years in space, but this signal was different. It pulsed with a rhythm that seemed almost alive, coming from somewhere near Jupiter's orbit. "Commander, the signal is getting stronger," Kate Duncan said from her communication station. Her fingers moved quickly across the touchscreen as she tried to clean up the transmission. "It's unlike anything in our database." The bridge of the EDF Nightingale was quiet except for the soft hum of equipment. Through the main viewport, Jupiter's massive form filled half the screen, its swirling storms creating patterns of orange and white. "Peter, what do the scans show?" Laura asked, turning to her science officer. Peter Martinez shook his head, his forehead creased with concentration. "That's the strange part, Commander. According to our instruments, there's nothing there, but the signal is clearly coming from a fixed point in space." Laura drummed her fingers on the armrest of her chair. "Protocol said they should report this to Earth Command and wait for instructions. But something about this signal pulled at her. In all her years of space exploration, she had never felt such certainty that they were about to make history. "Plot a course to the signal's origin," she ordered, "but keep us at a safe distance when we arrive." "Commander," John Kelly spoke up from his first officer's station, "regulations state we should contact Earth Command first." Laura nodded. "I know the regulations, John, but by the time we get approval, whatever's out there might be gone. We'll stay alert and keep our distance. Sometimes we have to trust our instincts." The Nightingale's engines hummed as they changed course. The massive ship, nearly a kilometer long, turned gracefully toward the mysterious signal. Laura felt the familiar flutter of excitement in her stomach that came with discovery. Hours passed as they approached the coordinates. The signal grew stronger, and Kate worked to decode it, her eyes fixed on her screens. The bridge crew grew more tense with each passing minute. "We're approaching the source," Peter announced, "coming into visual range in 10 seconds. Laura leaned forward in her chair. On screen, the main viewport shifted, and everyone on the bridge gasped. Against the black of space hung a ship so dark it seemed to swallow the light around it. It was massive, at least 3 times the size of the Nightingale, and shaped like nothing they had ever seen before. "Are you seeing this?" Peter whispered, his instruments forgotten. "It's absorbing all our scanning attempts. It's like looking at a hole in space." The black ship hung motionless. No lights shone from its surface, no signs of life or movement. Yet Laura felt certain they were being watched. "Kate, any progress on that signal?" "Yes, Commander. It's repeating the same pattern. I think it's a language, but nothing like we've ever encountered." John Kelly moved to stand beside Laura's chair. "What do we do now, Commander?" Laura studied the strange ship, her mind racing through possibilities. This was the moment every space explorer dreamed of, first contact with something truly alien. But it was also potentially the most dangerous moment of their lives. "We stay at this distance," she said firmly. "Kate, keep working on that signal. Peter, run every scan you can think of, even the experimental ones. I want to know everything about that ship before we make any moves." She paused, then added, "And send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we've made first contact." The black ship remained silent, but the signal continued its steady pulse, calling to them like a beacon in the night. Whatever secrets it held, Laura knew their lives would never be the same after this day. 3 days passed as the crew of the Nightingale studied the mysterious black ship. John Kelly hadn't slept more than a few hours, his eyes burning as he stared at the strange patterns flowing across his screen. The signal continued its steady pulse, but now it was changing, becoming more complex with each passing hour. "I think I've got something," he said, his voice rough from too much coffee. The bridge crew turned to look at him. "The pattern isn't just random. It's like a key trying different locks." Commander Wells moved to stand behind him, her shadow falling across his screen. "Explain." "Each pulse is testing our systems, trying to find a way to communicate that we can understand." John pointed to a series of repeating symbols. See these. They've appeared exactly 734 times, but each time they're paired with different characters. Kate Duncan spoke up from her station. "He's right, Commander. The signal is learning our language by analyzing our computer systems. It's happening faster now." Suddenly, every screen on the bridge flickered. The black ship, still hanging motionless in space, seemed to absorb even more light around it. Then words began appearing on their main display, one at a time, in clear English. "To, the Prince, Rome, Library Vessel 47. Statutus, UPDAT ready, time, ELAPSAZ, 3427, Standard CYCLDs. It's a message," Kate whispered, her fingers flying across her console. "But who's the prince?" Commander Wells straightened up. "Can we respond?" "I think so," John said, already typing. "The translation matrix is stable now." He sent a simple message. "We receive your signal. Identify yourself." The response came instantly, filling their screens with text. "ERROR. Recipient DNA PTERN. Duis not MATCH EXPECTED sequence. Analyzing ALT ornate patterns. ALERT. Unknown species. DTTCTE. QUERR. Identify your civilization status." Laura looked at her crew. "How do we answer that?" Peter Martinez spoke up from his science station. "Commander, I think this ship was meant for someone else, someone who was supposed to be here instead of us." "The prince," Kate added. "But whoever they were, they never showed up." John worked at his console, trying to make sense of the increasing flow of data. "This ship, it's like a giant library, Commander. It's part of a network that updates developing civilizations. But we weren't the intended recipients." The black ship's next message appeared more slowly, as if carefully choosing its words. "Wo ar nang. DDTTCKD civilization shows irregular development intipation. Analyzing technological progress. Analyzing social structures. Analyzing biological evolution. REQEST. Provide explanation for your PRECNC in this sector." "It's judging us," Laura said quietly, trying to decide if we're worthy of whatever knowledge it carries. She turned to John. "Send this message. We are humanity, from the planet Earth. We found your signal and came to investigate. We seek knowledge and peaceful contact with other civilizations." The bridge crew held their breath as they waited for a response. When it came, the message was brief. "INITYAT AIMS SUOM PREGNSIVSCN. Stand by. Or evaluation. Collusion. Unauthorized access to restrict inodology. May result in species termination." The last line made everyone on the bridge freeze. Laura gripped the back of John's chair, her knuckles white. The black ship had just turned from a mysterious messenger into a potential threat. Whatever tests lay ahead, they would determine not just the success of their mission, but possibly the survival of their species. Dr. Ashley Morgan had never imagined she would be the first human to step inside an alien ship. She floated through the entrance tube connecting the Nightingale to the black vessel, her heart pounding inside her protective suit. Behind her, engineer Chris Baker watched her vital signs on a portable monitor. "Everything okay in there, Ashley?" Commander Wells' voice came through the radio. "Yes," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "The tube is holding stable. The ship's gravity seems to be off." She switched on her helmet lights as she entered the dark vessel. It's beautiful in here." The walls looked like flowing black water, but they were solid to the touch, As her team's lights swept across the surface, tiny points of light appeared and disappeared, like stars in a moving galaxy. "The ship is responding to our presence," Chris said, his scanner beeping softly. "These patterns aren't random. They're data streams. The whole ship is like one giant computer." Ashley moved deeper into the vessel, following a path that seemed to form ahead of them. The walls began to glow with a soft blue light, illuminating their way. "It's guiding us somewhere," she said. They reached a large circular room. As they entered, the floor beneath them hummed, and gravity slowly returned. Screens appeared on the walls, floating in mid-air like sheets of light. "Commander," Chris called out, "you need to see this. The ship is showing us its database. It's incredible." Through their video feed, the bridge crew watched as images began to appear on the floating screens. They saw strange cities on distant worlds, creatures that defied imagination, and technology that looked like magic. "There are hundreds of civilizations in this database," Ashley said, her scientific mind trying to catalog everything she saw. "Maybe thousands, each one at a different stage of development." Peter's voice came over the radio. "The ship is letting us access its basic systems now. It seems to be some kind of library vessel. It travels between developing civilizations, sharing appropriate levels of knowledge with each one." Chris moved to what looked like a control panel, but we weren't supposed to find it. According to these readings, it was waiting for someone called the Prince, the leader of a civilization that was supposed to be here. Suddenly, all the screens changed at once. A message appeared, floating in the air before them. "Preliminary scan complete. Species human. Development stage. Early space faring. What are named? QRANT LEVL INSUF HISIAN. Or FUL ACCES. ANITYATINGCQRITE Perotog. The room's blue light turned red. Ashley felt a strange tingling in her head, and Chris grabbed his helmet with both hands. "Something's scanning our minds," Chris shouted. It's trying to understand how we think." Commander Wells' voice cut through their panic. "Dr. Morgan, get your team out of there now." But before they could move, the light changed again, becoming a soft green. New words appeared. "Interesting. Irregular patterndetes. Species shows unique problem solving abilities. Creative potential. XEEDs XPKTD parameters. Beginning. DETILED analysis." The tingling sensation stopped. Ashley and Chris looked at each other, both shaken but unhurt. "Commander," Ashley said, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear, I think it just gave us a test. And somehow, we passed." The screens around them began to fill with new information, but now it was presented in a way they could understand. The ship was teaching them, but carefully, like a parent showing a child how to take their first steps. Security Chief Daniel Ross watched the ship's systems flash red across his screen. After the initial mind scan, the black ship had begun a series of increasingly complex tests. Each one pushed the crew to their limits. Another power surge coming. He called out to the bridge crew. "This one's bigger than the last." Commander Wells gripped her chair as the lights flickered. "Kate, status report." "The ship is testing our emergency systems now," Kate said, her fingers flying over her console. "It's creating artificial problems for us to solve. Each one is harder than the last." The black ship had spent the past 12 hours challenging them. It started simple, with basic mathematics and physics problems. Then it moved to more complex tests, ethical dilemmas, crisis situations, and technological puzzles that stretched their understanding to its limits. "New scenario incoming," Daniel announced. On the main screen, a simulation appeared. It showed a colony ship filled with sleeping passengers, headed straight for a dying star. The ship's systems were failing, and they had only minutes to save 5,000 lives. "This is impossible," John Kelly said, studying the data. "We can't reroute enough power to both maintain life support and change course." Laura looked at the simulation carefully. "What if we're not supposed to? Maybe there's another way." She turned to her crew. "Peter, what would happen if we used the star's gravity to slingshot around it?" Peter's eyes widened. "That could work, but the timing would have to be perfect. 1 second too late, and the ship burns up. Too early, and it doesn't get enough speed to escape. Kate, run the numbers. Daniel, prepare for emergency power distribution. We do this together." The crew worked as one, each person adding their own piece to the solution. When they finally submitted their answer, the simulation froze. "New approach DTHT. Analyzing Evolution. Unexpected strategy identify. Creativity so HFY Story. And exceptional." The message flashed across their screens, followed by another simulation, then another. Each problem seemed impossible at first glance, but the crew kept finding new ways to solve them. Hours passed. The tests grew harder. Sometimes they failed, but they learned from each mistake. The ship watched, analyzed, and adjusted its challenges. Then, just as exhaustion began to set in, all systems returned to normal. A new message appeared. "Testing is complete. Preliminary results. Technical knowledge. Basic. Ethetial York. Stable. Creative problem solving. Exceptional. Cooperation efficiency. High. Adaptability. Remarkable. Unusual observation. Species shows CAPSATY to find isolations outside expected parameters. Did we pass? Kate asked, rubbing her tired eyes. Before anyone could answer, the ship sent another message. "Wo are neng. DDTCTED NOLEG illegal. Insuafis. INTFOR of ULXCCS. However, species shows unexpected potential. NITIATINGFINALCJALENG. The main screen changed, showing a complex pattern of lights and symbols. In the center, a simple question appeared. Will your species receive knowledge, MENTFOR ANO there? Laura looked at her exhausted crew. This wasn't just another test. This was humanity's chance to prove they deserved a place among the stars. Everything they had done, every problem they had solved, had led to this moment. "Together," she said, standing up, "we answer this together." Dr. Ashley Morgan sat in the ship's library room, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. The black ship had begun sharing selected pieces of knowledge, but even these small bits of information were almost too much to handle. Next to her, Chris Baker watched equations float in the air, his face pale and drawn. "How are they holding up?" Commander Wells asked, speaking quietly to Susan Parker, the ship's medical officer. Susan checked her medical tablet with a worried frown. "Their brain activity is off the charts. It's like trying to pour an ocean into a glass." She looked at the small group of scientists and engineers who had volunteered to receive the first data transfer. "I've had to sedate 3 of them already." The black ship's knowledge was vast. It contained science that made their most advanced theories look like child's play. There were concepts that had no words in any human language, ideas that stretched the limits of their understanding. "It's beautiful," Ashley whispered, reaching out to touch a floating diagram of what looked like a star system, but behaved nothing like any they had ever seen. "But it's too much, too fast." Chris nodded, his hand shaking as he took notes. "Every answer leads to 10 more questions, and some of these answers, they change everything we thought we knew." On the other side of the room, Peter Martinez studied a display about alien biology. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, but he couldn't stop watching. "Commander," he called out, "you need to see this. These beings, the ones who built this ship, they're nothing like what we imagined aliens would be." Laura walked over to look at his screen, but the symbols and images made her head spin. The ship had started with basic information, but even that was revolutionary. A simple alien periodic table showed elements they had never dreamed existed. Their basic mathematics proved that several of Earth's fundamental physics theories were wrong. "Susan," Laura said, "how long can they keep going like this?" "Not long. Their minds need rest. We're not built to process this much new information at once." She pointed to her medical readings. "Look at these stress indicators. If we don't take breaks, we risk causing permanent damage." Suddenly, Ashley stood up, her legs unsteady. "I think I found something about their power sources. If this is right, we could solve Earth's energy crisis in a day." "We could." She swayed, her eyes rolling back. Chris caught her before she fell. Susan rushed over with a sedative patch, placing it gently on Ashley's neck. "That's enough for today," she said firmly. "Everyone needs to rest." The floating displays dimmed slightly, and new text appeared. "Obvious observation. Biological limits re-cheat. Re-recommendation. Scheduled learning intervals required. Cavusion. Rapid novodology acquisition. May he uses in URL damage." Laura looked at her exhausted crew. They had learned more in a few hours than humanity had discovered in centuries. But the cost was becoming clear. Their minds weren't ready for such advanced knowledge. "The ship is right," she said. "We need to slow down. Create a learning schedule. We have to understand this knowledge, not just receive it." Susan helped Ashley to a chair. "The human brain can only take in so much at once. We need time to process, to adapt." As if understanding their limitations, the black ship began organizing its data into smaller, more manageable pieces. The floating displays rearranged themselves into simpler patterns, starting with basic concepts that would lead to more complex ideas. "It's teaching us how to learn," Chris said softly, watching the displays change. "Like building a foundation before trying to create a tower." Commander Laura Wells stood before the video screen, facing the leaders of Earth's major nations. After 3 weeks of carefully studying the black ship's knowledge, the time had come to make a decision that would change human history forever. "The ship has given us a choice," she explained, her voice steady despite her lack of sleep. "We can accept a basic package of knowledge suited to our current level of development, or we can try to handle a full database. But there's a catch." On the screen, the world leaders leaned forward. The President of the United States spoke first. "What's the catch, Commander?" "The full database comes with risks. If we can't handle it properly, if we use it wrongly, the ship has ways to." She paused, choosing her words carefully, "to make sure we don't misuse the knowledge." John Kelly stepped forward, holding a data tablet. "We've seen just a tiny part of what the ship knows. Even that small amount could advance our technology by 100 years. But the full database, it could either lift us to the stars or destroy us completely." The room fell silent as the leaders considered this information. Kate Duncan worked at her station, monitoring the ship's signals. The black vessel had remained patient, waiting for humanity's answer. "What about the original intended recipients?" the Chinese premier asked. "This prince," the ship mentioned. "They never came," Laura answered. "We don't know why, but the ship has accepted that we might be worthy of the knowledge instead. It's letting us choose our own path." Chris Baker spoke up from his engineering station. The ship's database contains information about hundreds of civilizations. Some of them made this same choice. Some succeeded. Others. He left the sentence unfinished. The ship's main message appeared on all their screens. Choice required. Option 1. Limited knowledge package. Safe implementation. Controlled advancement. Minimal risk. Option 2. The Vuel Accesius. Unlimited potential. Significant risk. Species survival not guaranteed. Time remaining for decision. 12 Earth hours. The world leaders began to argue. Some wanted to play it safe, to take the limited package. Others argued that humanity had to take risks to advance. The debate grew heated. Laura watched the arguments continue. She thought about everything they had learned in the past weeks. The ship had tested them in many ways. But maybe the biggest test was this choice itself. What would it reveal about humanity? Then she noticed something in the ship's message, a pattern that seemed familiar. She turned to Kate. "Can you show me all the ship's messages about choices? Every time it gave us options during the tests." Kate pulled up the records, and Laura studied them carefully. A smile slowly spread across her face. "Distinguished leaders," she said, interrupting their debate, "I think we've been looking at this the wrong way. The ship isn't just testing our choice. It's testing how we make that choice." She turned to her crew, seeing the same realization dawn on their faces. During all their tests, the ship had rewarded them most when they found unexpected solutions, when they thought differently than expected. "I have a proposal," she said, facing the world leaders again. "But first, I need you all to understand something important about how this ship thinks, and why it might have chosen to reveal itself to us in the first place." Laura watched the black ship's displays change as she explained her idea to the world leaders and her crew. The ship had taught them its biggest lesson, not through its database, but through its tests. Every time they found a new way to solve a problem, the ship showed greater interest in humanity. "We don't have to choose between safe knowledge and dangerous knowledge," she said. "The ship wants to see how we think, how we solve problems. So let's show it." Kate Duncan's eyes lit up with understanding. "You mean we make our own option?" "Exactly." Laura turned to the screen of world leaders. "Every civilization before us probably chose one of the two options. But what if we work with the ship to create a new way of learning? One that fits how humans think and learn." The ship's displays flickered as if responding to her words. New text appeared. Analyzing HFY unexpected approach DTTT. Processing. Chris Baker spoke up from his station. "Commander, the ship's energy patterns are changing. I think it's interested." Laura continued, her voice growing stronger. "We've learned that humans can't handle too much knowledge at once. But we're good at learning in steps, at finding creative ways to use what we know. So let's ask the ship to be our teacher, not just our library." The world leaders whispered among themselves. The Russian president leaned forward. "What exactly are you suggesting, Commander?" "A partnership," Laura replied. "We ask the ship to share its knowledge in a way that matches how humans learn. We work with it to understand what we're ready for. We prove ourselves step by step." More text appeared on the screens. Analyzing human learning patterns. Comparing two previous species. Unique approach identify. Processing. RQEST. The minutes stretched out as they waited. Laura felt her heart pounding. She had either found the perfect solution or made a terrible mistake. Finally, the ship responded. Proposal accepted. Reason. Demonstrates evolutionary potential. Creating any new protoxal. Adaptive learning interface. Beginning system modification. The bridge crew cheered. On the screens, the world leaders smiled and nodded in approval. The ship's displays began to change, reorganizing its vast database into a format that humans could understand and learn from gradually. "The ship is creating a whole new way of teaching," Peter said, watching the data flow across his screen. "It's never done this before. We're the first. Observation. Humans, SHOVO, unique QEPRBLM solving abilities. Siontensil usion. Species worthy of curiostomizing, notally G transfer. NITIAT ANG long-term education protocol." Susan Parker checked her medical readings. "The new format is much easier on our brains. We can actually process this." Over the next few hours, the ship worked with them to create a learning system that would allow humanity to grow at its own pace. It would be a long journey, but they would take it together, learning and advancing step by step. As Laura watched her crew begin working with the ship's new teaching system, she realized they had done more than just solve a problem. They had shown that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in knowing everything, but in finding new ways to learn and grow. The black ship, once meant for a prince who never arrived, had found something unexpected instead. A young species that looked at problems differently, that found new paths where others saw only walls. On the main screen, one final message appeared. "Beginning any due shape here. Human-ship cooperation. XPKTEOUTCOME. Unknown. Potential. Unlimited."